AtlantaMusicCritic.com presents a conversation with lyric tenor Timothy Fallon. Mr. Fallon has been hailed by the New York Times as possessing an elegant sense of phrasing and luminous tone with his sure-handed control of timbre, from velvety pianissimos to bright confident high notes. He was born in Binghamton, New York, and he holds a Bachelor of Arts in Music from Westminster Choir College, a Master of Music in Opera from Binghamton University, and an Artist Diploma from the Juilliard School. Please join William Ford, creator of AtlantaMusicCritic.com, in conversation with Grammy Award-winning tenor Timothy Fallon.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thanks.
Good. Good to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
This CD release
Yes.
are songs of Resphigi.
Yes.
Tell me how you came across those songs and your interest in it.
My first solo album is of Liszt songs, and I made it with my friend and pianist Damiel Bushakovitz. And we chose to do Liszt because of the interest of both the piano and the vocal line. And I think the Resphigi album came across like that as well, because they're very interesting piano lines, and they're really shocking, operatic, and varied vocal lines. And when BIS asked if we would like to do another album, and we tried to think very intelligently about what we would present as an idea. And we're always looking to find, what is the market lacking? It's not lacking in Schubert. It was really Amiel who said, I think we should do Resphigi songs. I think they'll fit your voice perfectly, and they're beautiful, and they're not widely recorded. And so after looking at some of the songs and doing a deep dive, I thought it would be perfect. And there's a huge range of stylistic variation and just interesting texts and colors and that Resphigi brings that I thought would be interesting for more people to hear. So that's why we did that.
Well, for sure, when you hear his symphonic music, it's accessible, it's colorful.
Yes.
It's never less than exciting. And what you're describing of his songs sounds very similar. I like his music a lot. It's almost neo-romantic because he was really writing during a time post the Romantic era, as we generally understand it.
He had a lot of interests, and I think he's very Italian. I mean, he is Italian, but he takes a lot of what Italy had produced prior to his life and kind of refocuses and reuses a lot of that type of material, like 5 songs called Cinque Canti all'Antica, which he uses texts from Boccaccio and Falconieri, and uses melodies, these very old melodies, and adds a piano line, which gives them this kind of rebirth. Everything is in Italian except for the 4 Scottish songs, because he did travel a lot. And so he did go to Scotland, and well, you can hear from these that he was influenced by their song tradition, and they're very beautiful. And his accompaniment is, the flavor that he brings to that. The first song cycle is by it's called Dietas Sylvanae. By the poetry is by a man by the name of Antonio Rubino, who was an artist and a toy maker, and he was an illustrator. And his work, if you look it up, was a precursor for Japanimation far before that. But it's very colorful and fantastical, and he writes about all of these ancient creatures like a faun and spirits and the rich natural nature and flora and fauna. Everything is very colorful and expressive, and all of these things within all of the songs that we sang. You have a lot of, romanticism, but also impressionism, and it does get into modernism too. and it's so interesting. And then you have the ancient song far back in time. So you kind of get this, it's a kaleidoscope of colors, styles, and sounds. It's wonderful.
Excellent. You leave for Vienna in August?
Yes, the first performance is on September 4th, but our rehearsals begin on August 22nd. I feel like it's a real gift.
Absolutely. Congratulations on that. And congratulations on the CD. By the way, is the CD out?
Yes, the CD's out. You can purchase it on where you purchase CDs, or on the BIS record label website, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, I think, sells it. And it's also available to stream on all streaming platforms as well.
And the title of it is
Crepuscolo, which
right.
is the last song in the Dieta Silvane. It's the Italian word for twilight.
Okay. All right. I was reading your biography.
Yes.
And you were born in Binghamton, New York.
I was.
Is that correct?
Yes.
What was Binghamton like when you were growing up?
Well, Binghamton is a really interesting place. It's a place that I really love still. And I have many amazing friends that I had there. My parents were very outgoing, gregarious people, and they had many friends. And we all grew up in a really, I would say, very happy, friendly environment there. And Binghamton breeds an odd ducks. It might be a small place, but people come from all over the place really there. And so I grew up with like a lot of different people around me, and all interesting characters. And it was a really nice place to live. My sister still lives there, so I go back and visit as often as I can.
What is Binghamton's claim to fame?
Well, IBM started in Binghamton, in Endicott, New York there. And currently it is a quintessential industrial town that a lot of the industry has left, but some still does remain there.
What did your parents do?
My father worked for the Department of Transportation in Binghamton, and my mother was an elementary school teacher. She taught kindergarten mostly.
When did you get an inkling that you might be interested in singing? What are some of your earliest memories of that?
I always sang in a church choir at my church. It was St. Patrick's Church in Binghamton. And I tried a lot of different instruments: piano, violin, saxophone, and nobody responded to me on any of those instruments like they did when I opened my mouth to sing. So it was very ego driven. I thought, well, I'm getting the most positive feedback when I open my mouth to sing, so I guess I'll sing. And then I joined the American Boy Choir School when I was in 5th grade. And I went to boarding school in Princeton, New Jersey, and sang with that choir through the 8th grade.
How was that transition for you to uproot from Binghamton to go to Princeton?
I really talked my parents into sending me to that school. I forged a true campaign to get them on board with that. And I don't really know where that drive came from, but I sincerely wanted to do that. And I knew that it would afford me great opportunities like traveling all over the world. And I didn't really know at that age, but I knew, I had a feeling, an inkling that it would be something that would be really interesting and special. And it was.
When you sang in the church choir, when did you decide that this was going to be your career?
Well, that was later, because I stopped singing at the boy choir when I was 14 years old. And then I went back to Binghamton to high school there. And I was at a summer music camp in Oneonta, New York at Hartwick College. And I met my first major voice teacher there who had an enormous impact on me. And he said, "You can be an opera singer if you want, I think. And if you want, we can work together." And I started doing that when I was 16 years old. So I would say at 16, I knew that I wanted to become an opera singer. Sadly, he passed away a couple of years ago as well, but he was a rabbi in Oneonta, New York, and his name was Don Roberts. He gave me an incredible technical base that I sincerely still rely upon.
Your parents apparently were very supportive
Very.
of your singing aspirations?
Yes, they were they were really interesting people, and they had no real musical background, but we always had music in our house. And if any one of my siblings wanted to do something, it doesn't have to be music, they really helped us figure out a way to enrich those interests. And so they were always very supportive of all of us and every single thing that we wanted to do.
What, I assume it was in public school?
Yeah, I went to the public high school and I went to the elementary school there. Yeah.
What did your peers think about your singing?
I think, if they heard me, they liked it. But in my personal friend group, I didn't share that part of myself very much with them. And I had a friend who once said to me, if you're singing in the Boston area and you don't tell me that you're singing, I don't think we can be friends. And I said, oh, fine. I could tell he was very serious. So I invited him to a recital that I was giving at the Longy School of Music with a friend of mine who was a pianist. And after that concert, we were at a reception and he came in and he was like bewildered. He was like, I cannot believe that you can do that and you don't share that with your close friends. So I try to do better in that now and share what I do, the people that are closest to me.
Why do you think it was that you didn't share that part of you?
I don't know. I think it's an intimate part of what it's like a very intimate thing, even though you do it in front of tons of people. And I think that I wanted to maintain some type of normalcy in my, everyday life where I was hanging out with, my friends and just doing whatever things you do as a high school student or college student.
Mm-hmm. What did you think the reaction of the people close to you might have been had they known you had this special talent?
Well, I think they did know that they all knew that I went to boarding school and that I, had sung like that. I don't know. I think now they all find it to be an interesting part of me.
So you were 16 and you kind of decided this is for you. What did you do then?
And then I just started weekly voice lessons. And my father would drive me to Oneonta from New York, which was about an hour. And I would go on Sundays. And I just started doing weekly hour up to 2 hours of, technical training with Don for those years without really singing a lot of repertoire. I just worked on technique. And then by the time it was time to go to college, I think because I was so fond of living in Princeton and being a part of the American Boy Choir School, I ended up going to Westminster Choir College, which is also in Princeton. Yeah, so then everything just pointed towards, trying to become a professional musician.
Hasn't the Westminster program come into some difficulty of late?
Very sadly, yes. The university that owns Westminster Choir College, called Rider University, there's some contentious issues going on with the real estate property of the Westminster Choir College in Princeton, and they've moved the campus to Lawrenceville, New Jersey, where Rider University is, and it's greatly impacted the institution and its output.
But it continues on.
Yes.
Because I think at one point it was even questionable if it was going to continue on.
Yes.
I recollect. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you were at the Westminster School for how long?
From 1999 to 2003. I got my undergrad degree there, a bachelor's degree in music. And then I went to Binghamton University in Binghamton, and I got a master's in opera, and I sang with the Tri-Cities Opera while I was there.
And anybody in particular gave you a nudge to your career that is really memorable to you?
Well, one of my greatest mentors is Marilyn Horne. I was a part of her program at the Music Academy of the West in Santa Barbara, California, and I sang there a few summers and just had a wonderful time there. And while singing a Rossini opera, Il Viaggio a Re, the former opera director of the Leipzig Opera was in the audience and gave me a job on the spot after that opera. So I owe Santa Barbara Music Academy of the West and Marilyn Horne a lot, because that really started my professional career.
How long were you in Santa Barbara?
On and off, I think I went for 3 summers.
So then you went to Leipzig.
Then I went to Leipzig, yeah.
You were, as I recollect, reading the house tenor.
Yes, yep, one of them.
What was that like?
Well, it was a big education really fast to work in an opera house like that and be a member of the ensemble. You're doing a lot of work all the time and doing multiple productions, sometimes at the same time. And yeah, I think that it made me feel very comfortable on stage and feeling comfortable doing things that were thrown at you. Yeah, it was an amazing education. When I first started there, I really did not speak German. And so that was also a sink or swim situation. So it was very valuable. I feel like I have a very fluent working German now, and so I'm very grateful for that. And Leipzig is a very interesting city. It was a city of 1 million people before the fall of the wall, and then half the occupants left after the fall of the wall. So the infrastructure of Leipzig is quite large. And when we were living there, it was 500,000 people. It also has a very famous university there. And now it's reclaimed most of those people. And I think it's close to 1 million people live there again. So it's changed a lot since we've left, even in the past 7 years.
And it has the Gewandhaus Orchestra. You can't ask for much better than that.
That's true. And they play for the opera there.
How many hours a week did you spend being part of the staff?
Oh, well, I guess it just depends on your schedule and what shows you're working on. If you're in rehearsal, that's 6 hours to 8 hours of rehearsal every day for staging, and then plus coachings and, for preparation of other roles that are coming up. It can be a lot. I would say a maximum of 8 hours a day.
And what about the acting part of it? You got the singing down. What about the acting part?
I really like that element. And so I'm always game for acting. It's a crucial part of the entire process. And so I'm very much into it, and I love it.
Did you have specific acting lessons?
When I went to Juilliard, I did take dance lessons, and we had acting lessons as well.
Were there particular roles that you really got into while you were in Leipzig?
I think that, when asked, like, what's my favorite role, any question like that, it's just whatever I'm doing at the time. I find myself invested in whatever it is that I'm doing at the moment. And so if the role feels good in my voice and, I feel technically that I can conquer it, then it all seems enjoyable and fun to me.
Have you ever had an experience where you get off the stage and said to yourself, oh my God, I really did a terrible job?
Yes. Yes. There's so much that has to come into play in an opera. There are all of these forces that are combining to make one whole. And I think it's very difficult and challenging to make all of those things come together to make a perfect evening or show. And so, yeah, of course, I've had nights where I thought, oh, like I would prefer to just leave the house and not have to bow.
Fair enough. And what about after Leipzig?
I stayed in Leipzig after having left the house and did a lot of freelance work. I do a lot of concert work and lieder singing and, art song singing. I now live in Woodbridge, Connecticut, and I began doing some teaching as well to young people of music theory. I made 2 solo recordings and then did some other recording work with the Buffalo Philharmonic, a piece by Richard Danielpour called The Passion of Yeshua.
Would you say that most of your stage career was in Europe?
Oh, yes. And in fact, I'm moving to Vienna in August. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll be the house lyric tenor at the Volksoper there under the new direction of Lotte de Beer, who's a really amazing Dutch director, and we've done a lot of work together. She asked me to come be a part of the Volksoper under her direction, and so I'll be there definitely for 2 seasons, this upcoming season and the next. And I just got back from Vienna doing some preseason rehearsals for La Cenerentola, which by Rossini, which will be my first role there of Don Ramiro.
Why do you think that your career has taken off so well in Europe? That's not to say it isn't good here, but I'm wondering, is there a specific kinship you think you have with European audiences or the European stage? Or
I think after I graduated from Juilliard, I started my professional career in Leipzig, and so I was just there. You work with a lot of directors when you're part of an ensemble at a house, and so you forge relationships with them and with conductors as well. And so I think it just happened because I went and lived there.
All right.
And now I'm going back because of that, really.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very hard as an opera singer to not enjoy travel, moving around. It's a perk to me.
If you were to try to grow your career in the US, what would you expect that to be like in comparison to what it's like when you work in Europe?
Whenever I open my mouth to sing, I just try to do high quality work. And so I think if you do that enough times in the right places with the right people, things happen. Of course, when you're a really young singer, I feel like I was extremely ambitious and wanting to go out and conquer. And now I feel like I let things just happen as they do, and I feel very comfortable.
Seems to me opera plays a very different role in the European cultural life than it does in the US cultural life.
Yes.
Is that a good statement?
Yeah, I think it is. A lot of the repertoire is part of the European fabric. It's part of the culture. And so a lot of people know this repertoire like we know Mary Had a Little Lamb. And so I think from the get-go, it comes from a much different place. And I think that opera, even in Europe, is still, there's a classist element, I think, to opera, which often jades people's opinions of it in the US. I think that if people just were to go and see the work itself, maybe some of those prejudices would be eradicated. And it is true, I do think there is a classist element to a lot of opera in the US, and the cost. I mean, it's a very costly art to put on any level. Still in the US, there's an enormous, voracious public that loves opera. An opera fan is a very unique animal. Opera is a pageant, and so people want to be somehow part of that pageantry. And so, there's a big tradition of dressing for the opera. And so, I think that's kind of fun.
Have you experienced the European audiences as different than the US audiences, if you can make that kind of generalization?
Oh, sure. I think that in Europe, they'll boo if they really don't like something. And I actually kind of find it exciting because I think that they have a true opinion on what's happening. But I think in general, a lot of people just clap for clapping's sake. I think that they're more discerning in Europe sometimes. And so hearing like wild booing, I haven't experienced that a lot in the US. Some, but not as much as I have.
Right. I mean, when Roseanne Barr sang the Star Spangled Banner, I do remember a lot of booing for that. But I think discernment is probably the right term. I notice when I go to the symphony here, people will give a standing ovation to anything. Standing ovation doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think I agree with you.
Looks like your career continues to flourish. That's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It was really good talking with you. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, William.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad to have done this, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Good talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good day now.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
Good luck.
Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Atlanta Music Critic.